Our homeland is like our comfort zone, and it's where all of our needs are met. It's where we feel we've got enough food and water, we feel loved and cared for, we're well rested. But on a fairly regular basis, we get shifted from our homeland into these other surrounding states, and we'll call these neighbourlands. So this happens when we get hungry and we get tired and cold and lonely and scared. So what I'd like to do is extend this analogy to explore what happens to some people following stoma surgery. So if we imagine then that the old homeland is the life that somebody lived pre-surgery, and this can include how people interacted with their core values and their relationships and their interests, and also how they felt in their bodies, so that implicit sense of familiarity and trust. And then suddenly after surgery, they find themselves far away from their old homeland, in this completely new land that we're going to call Stomaland. And when people are in Stomaland, how they see the world is profoundly affected because their body has been altered. And Stomaland differs from the other neighbourlands that I talked about before, in that when we get hungry and tired and cold, these are natural human states. And our bodies almost intuitively know what we need to do to get back to homeland. But having a stoma is not a natural human experience. And therefore, because we're going to perceive the world differently, because our body has been altered, it's going to affect how we relate to things. So that means that because the body has been altered, it's not possible to get back to old homeland. And so actually what needs to happen is that people need to find a new homeland. And this is a place that they can learn to accept their bodily change within a meaningful life. And I guess we'd all agree as clinicians that we want to be able to help people with this transition. So what the research tells us is this, that stoma-forming surgery changes the way an individual relates to their social environment and connects with others, creating self-consciousness and impeding social confidence and autonomy. So first, let's look at what's going on when somebody arrives in Stomaland. So this is the picture, some of what they might tell you. What we know is that how we understand our difficulties has a profound effect on how we cope. And what that means is that if following stoma surgery, someone perceives the world differently because their body has been altered, it might follow that they would struggle to adapt to a changed body, struggle to achieve mastery over their body, and continue to experience their body as unfamiliar. So what I'd like to do is use this scenario. Maybe some of you might be able to relate to this. So you see a friend across the street, but she appears to ignore you. I'd just really like you to think for a moment, what would your immediate reaction be? Would it be to storm across the street and confront her? Would you avoid her? Would you go home and think about every failed relationship you've ever had? Or would you have no reaction? I guess the bottom line is, maybe she ignored you on purpose, maybe she didn't. We actually have absolutely no idea unless we ask her. What we can all do is start to slow the process down, and then we can develop a mindset that encourages a variety of possibilities and not just one. But I guess what we need to do in the first place is recognise that we're having these automatic thoughts first. So we take the Stomaland story and we create some order, or really what it is helping create some understanding. And I guess in creating understanding, it's not just for our benefit as clinicians, but it's very much to help people to make sense of their own story. Because as I said before, if we're struggling to understand what's going on, it has a profound effect on how we cope. And as we saw in the earlier example, a lot of us will avoid from time to time. I think when I think back to, when you're a child, you learn very early that if something hurts or is painful, you don't do it again. You don't touch the hot plate on a stove a second time. And so it follows then that we apply the same rationale to emotional pain. The problem is that if we're avoiding situations, and particularly if we're avoiding a lot of situations, we actually never learn that we can cope with those situations. And I think this is a problem after surgery, because it might get in the way of people being able to adapt to bodily change, and it might get in the way of people being able to move from Stomaland into a new homeland. So talking about stressful life events in a supportive context is a key component of successful coping and positive adjustment behaviour. Talking helps individuals to make sense of their experience and achieve emotional resolution. It's associated with psychological well-being and role and social functioning. So just as a recap, if you remember, to be motivated to change, we need to see it as important to us, and we also need to feel some level of confidence that we could change if we wanted to. So the important part of motivation is basically this. What is it that you're wanting in your life? What would make your life meaningful? What are the things that you were doing before surgery that you might like to do again? What is important to you is really what we're asking. What we want to do is develop what's called a graded hierarchy. And the reason for doing this is we want to help people have some sense of control over situations that they might find very frightening. You see, sometimes I think what might happen is that when people are looking at getting back into something that they've been avoiding, for example, like socialising post-surgery, they're just imagining doing exactly the same as what they did before surgery. But as we've learnt, the body's been altered, and so because the body's been altered, you see the world slightly differently. And so that means that you need to relearn, in a way, how to socialise again in a really step-by-step way. And that's really where a graded hierarchy comes in. And then what about thoughts about, I don't trust my body? Well, this is where we'd probably want to generate ideas for how you could learn to trust your body again. So you could ask questions. What would need to happen for you to feel more trusting of your body? Can we work out some ideas for learning to trust your body again? And I think this is also where patient stories can be really powerful in helping people develop a plan for how to trust their body again. So learning from other people, for example, paying attention to their body in different situations, or learning from others what they've done to help them develop trust in the body. Just like waves at the beach will never stop coming in, emotions are just the same. So rather than fight them, what we can learn to do is ride them out. And if that's too difficult to ride out, well, distraction is always a really good option. So basically, distraction just involves coming up with anything at all that is going to get you through the moment while you're feeling that emotion. If people get stuck along the way, you can always refer them on. You don't have to do all of the work yourself. I think the most important message that we get across is that there is always hope and that change is always possible. Thank you.